Welcome to the conversation on the TYT network. Joining me now is David Pakman. He's another great progressive talk show host. You're going to be shocked to find out, the David Pakman Show. And he's also the host of the new Spanish language series, In Contexto. We'll talk about that in a minute. David, welcome back to the Young Turks, man. How you doing?
Always great to be with you, Cenk.
All right, great to have you. So, David, let's talk about the news of the day a little bit. Biden made a number of his picks, like Janet Yellen, a Treasury Secretary. People are mixed on, some progressives like it, but Wall Street loves it. So that's kind of an interesting new paradigm I didn't expect. And then you've got more hawkish picks when it comes to Secretary of State and some of his national security apparatus. So overall, as a progressive, what do you make of the cabinet picks so far?
So first of all, completely unsurprising in every way. Joe Biden picking people that are more or less in line with the guy he's been on the campaign trail, the guy he mostly was as vice president to Barack Obama. The Yellen pick is interesting, as you're pointing out. There are progressives that like it and progressives that are not so big on it. I mean, first of all, you have to expect that your Treasury Secretary, especially as a Democratic president, is going to be somebody who believes that monetary policy is the way that you get things done. I can't imagine she will stand in the way of anything Joe Biden would try to do if he gets the ability to do it, but completely unsurprising and pretty uncontroversial in every way. And so far listen, if your standard is, we've got to return to something a little more normal. We need people with experience so that we can stop being a global laughingstock and rebuild some of these relationships. These are the people you pick. If you thought wrongly that Joe Biden was a socialist, you're going to be surprised that none of these people are socialists, right? So I mean, I think just completely unsurprising in every way so far.
Yeah. So David, given that, how do you think the next 4 years plays out? Because my guess is that Biden is who we thought he was, right? He's a moderate to conservative Democrat. He's certainly not going to go for anything big. But his infrastructure / environmental bill, it's not that bad. It's $2 trillion of infrastructure spending that gets us to a much more sustainable environment. So does he go for stuff like that? Does he, at a minimum, go for the public option? And when I say go for it, I mean make a real effort, not like a half-hearted effort. Oh, Mitch McConnell vetoed it, what can I do? I guess it's over, let's just go back to giving more tax cuts to the rich. So I genuinely don't know. That's why I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think that this idea of the effort, one of the things that very often we hear from some of our brothers and sisters on the left is he or she didn't try hard enough. And then when pressed about what exactly that means, it's not always totally clear. I think if Biden doesn't get the Senate, right, depending on what happens with these two races in Georgia, I don't understand how you get tax reform done as Joe Biden described in his policy platform when he was candidate Biden. I don't see how he does public option and possibly reduce the Medicare buy-in. I just don't think you do it. I just don't think it happens, and I think it's regardless of how much you try. On the other hand, the list of things he can do by executive order, and there's a lot that has to be undone from Donald Trump's last 4 years, I think it's substantial. And so in terms of whether he tries, I think it'll be more interesting to look at, does he do everything by executive order that he could do? Because if he doesn't do those things, that's where I think you can more credibly say he didn't really want to do it, or he didn't put in the effort.
So David, my number one problem with the Democrats is that they think trying just means, well, I introduced a bill, and then when they said no, I went home. So I'm not in the camp of folks who are unrealistic and say, well, just get it done. Okay, well, that doesn't mean anything. The question is how? How do you get it done? But that's where Democrats stop and go, well, there's nothing we can do. No, I think that there's a lot they can do. But most of it is rhetorical and a matter of politics. And so the Republicans do play that politics and the Democrats don't. So what do I mean by that? So let's take an easy one, like $15 minimum wage. Now, theoretically, if they had a Democratic Senate, that would pass on day one. But even then, I don't actually believe that. But But theoretically, that's what they claimed, right? So now if you have a Republican Senate, they're gonna say no. And then you'll get to find out who is Joe Biden. Because what I would do is I would then pound Mitch McConnell and the Republicans into submission. How? We know for an absolute fact, because of ballot measures that passed in Florida, Arkansas, and Missouri, that the whole country wants $15 minimum wage. And in overwhelming numbers, it passes by 2/3 almost every time. So what do? You go and you make a giant platform around that, and you pressure the Republican senators until they get a sense that the poll numbers are dipping so much they're going to lose, or they're going to pass $15 minimum wage. As I explained that, David, is there any chance that a Biden team would ever do anything like that?
There's definitely a chance. It's going to depend who the economic advisors are, but I think that the other side to that is, you can almost always get something done if you're willing to give something up. And if we learned anything, I mean, look at Mitt Romney and Kasich 36 hours after Election Day, going back to the same tired tropes of we've got to keep the deficit down. Mitt Romney wants to prevent expansion, Medicare for all. And John Kasich says, don't let yourselves be too influenced by the left of the party. All of these supposed anti-Trump Republicans for the last 4 years, they're immediately going back to their intractable politics and despicable obstruction. So you also have to consider, what do you have to give up to them in order to force them on board? If you have the benefit, like you're pointing out, on minimum wage, of an increasingly popular policy that even pseudo red states like Florida are now supporting, I think you're right that falls under the easy column. I think the tax reform and healthcare are much tougher hills to climb if you don't have the Senate.
Yeah, as we talk this through, David, it becomes exceedingly clear to me, Biden is not going to rhetorically fight Republicans. He's going to, other than executive orders, he's going to surrender on everything. And so that's going to lead to a toxic situation in 2024, let alone 2022. So last question on all that. How quickly do you think progressives should turn around and start fighting the Biden administration? Because of course, Washington says don't ever, ever, ever. If you just kiss his ass enough, he'll listen to you. I think that's a foolish, non-political argument. It's a compliance argument. But there is a legitimate question about, hey, this is a new administration and we just got rid of the monster. Let's give Biden a chance. What does it mean to give Biden a chance?
I think it's you start immediately. I mean, you start now. You start now critiquing cabinet picks. You don't wait. And the election's over. Biden is going to be the president. So there's no more. If anybody was calculating about, I really want to get rid of Trump, but I also want to criticize Joe Biden, and I don't know what to do. If anybody was in that position, that's over because Joe Biden is going to be president. There's a list of supposed day one executive orders. Does he do it or not? We're going to know that on day one. The first 100 days, there are priorities that they've outlined for the first 100 days. You start holding him to it right away. I don't see any reason whatsoever to wait, Cenk.
Yeah, absolutely. The media will yell at us in unison, but we're used to that. So David, tell me about in contexto. So a lot of people might not know that you're originally from Argentina, right?
That's absolutely correct.
So I'm just saying that they might be surprised that you're leading a Spanish show. So tell us what it is and what you guys are doing with it.
Yeah, so basically for years, I get emails from people who say, David, listen, I'm a first generation born in the US. My parents, they want progressive political commentary. Their English is not at a level where they can really take in the David Pakman Show, the Young Turks, et cetera. You should really look at doing the David Pakman Show in Spanish. Opportunity didn't present itself until it did. So I'm doing a half-hour show. It's basically a once a week Spanish version of the David Pakman Show. It's progressive political talk in Spanish. This is not really being done in this way at all. It's on the Estrella network. It's also available online. And the idea is, listen, the Latino vote, we saw what happened in Florida. Pennsylvania, Arizona, on both sides of this. The Latino vote is so important to American politics. Some of the states that are starting to become purple states, possibly blue states, it could come down to the Latino vote. So if I speak Spanish, why am I not speaking to that audience? It's a must do. And so we're doing it. And so I do my English show and I do my Spanish show, and it's super exciting to be doing something to a totally different audience.
Yeah, can we do it in Spanish? Sí se puede. It's the only Spanish I know. I'm also bilingual. I was thinking of doing a show in Turkish and then realized 3 people would watch it. Okay, so last thing. Speaking of that, David, Biden did not do nearly as well with Latinos as expected. What's your sense of what went wrong?
So I think a couple different things happened. Among the Latino vote is not one thing. It's dozens of communities. Most of them are quite liberal, progressive, leftist. In particular, Cuban Americans and sometimes Venezuelan Americans, because of a very reflexive anti-Castro, anti-Chavez, anti-Maduro thing, like the attacks on socialism that they hear from Republicans, even if there's nothing in common between Joe Biden and those other people that I mentioned. So I think in Florida, that was a factor. I also think that just by sheer distraction, Trump didn't talk about the wall and Mexican rapists and criminals as much in the last 6 months as he did in 2016. It wasn't because he's now enlightened on that issue. It's just he was distracted with coronavirus, having coronavirus himself, running this campaign in a very different scenario. And I think that the absence of some of that stuff may have also helped him a couple points. But in the end, I don't think we should go crazy, because his support among Latino voters was still within the historical range for Republicans over the last 20 years. But it did certainly go up from 4 years ago.
All right, you're gonna get that in Contexto and on the David Pakman Show. Thank you so much, David, appreciate it.
Always great to be with you.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.